Okay, so you know that feeling. When there's just never enough time, and like even when you do find a spare minute, the energy to do anything is just gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this week we're diving deep into that very thing.
I love it.
This whole, like lack of time, lack of motivation thing. We've got some really interesting articles and notes you sent over, so we're going to try and like really unpack all that.
Yeah.
See what we can learn about it and what it might mean for everyone listening.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So just to kick things off, what really struck me looking at all this stuff was how, those two things, lack of time and lack of motivation, they seem like separate problems, right?
Right.
But they almost always seem to go hand in hand.
It's so true. And it's like a fascinating knot to untangle.
Yeah, exactly.
How do they feed into each other?
Yeah. Because it's rarely just one or the other, is it?
No, it's never one or the other.
So like think about it when you're super stressed out, right?
Right.
Just constantly up against deadlines and feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. Does that make you feel like starting something new? Or even finishing anything that's already on your plate?
Yeah, no way.
It's like your brain is just like, nope, I'm out.
Totally. And then on the flip side, right,
Yeah.
when you put something off and put it off and put it off.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly this tiny little task turns into this huge time suck.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you didn't have the motivation to do it in the first place.
It's crazy how that happens.
It's like procrastination creates its own time crunch.
Exactly. Like, it's its own weird form of, like, self-sabotage, almost.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's interesting, too, because, like, one of the articles you sent, the one on productivity hacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a lot of those tips are just trying to solve the time management piece.
Right.
Without really addressing the motivation piece.
Yeah. It's like they're missing half of the equation.
Totally. And it made me think about, like, that analogy of pouring water into a leaky bucket.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can try to be as efficient as possible.
Right. But if you're not dealing with that underlying lack of motivation,
it's all for nothing.
Yeah, you're still going to end up feeling empty.
Exactly.
And I think for a lot of people, they probably don't even realize that those two things are connected.
Right.
So I guess, like, for you personally, when you feel that squeeze, that lack of time and that lack of motivation, where do you think it usually starts for you? Is it the lack of time that leads to that feeling of being drained?
It's funny.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of times it starts with that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, I have way too much to do.
Okay.
And then it's like my motivation just evaporates.
Right.
But I do think there's something to be said for, if you feel like you have at least some control over your time.
Oh, interesting.
Even if you're still super busy.
Yeah.
It can really make a difference in how stressed you feel.
That makes sense.
And there's some research out there that suggests that even having that little bit of control over your time can actually boost your motivation.
Huh. So it's almost like a reverse of what we were just talking about.
Exactly. It's like this weird paradox.
Yeah, because if you feel like you're constantly reacting to things instead of, actually being in control.
Yeah.
It's got to be way harder to get motivated.
For sure.
So, okay, so we've talked about the problem, this whole like interplay between lack of time and lack of motivation.
Right.
So what's the solution?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's not as simple as just saying, manage your time better.
Right.
Or just get motivated.
No, definitely not.
So where do we even start?
Well, I think the key here is to realize that you don't need to make some huge, drastic change.
Okay.
Even just focusing on one tiny little thing can make a big difference.
Interesting.
So, like, maybe you find just 15 minutes in your day to do something you actually enjoy.
Okay.
Or you pick one tiny little task that you've been putting off and you just force yourself to do it.
So it's almost like finding a little win in one area.
Exactly.
That can then kind of snowball into bigger changes.
Right. It's like a domino effect.
Because that little win gives you either like a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah.
Or that little spark of accomplishment.
Right.
And that can then kind of fuel the other side of the equation.
Totally. It creates this positive feedback loop.
Okay. I love that.
Where small changes lead to bigger changes.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, we've talked about a lot today.
We have.
This whole interplay between time and motivation.
A lot to think about.
So here's a thought to kind of sit with for a while.
Okay.
What if you picked one of those things to focus on, either reclaiming a little bit of time for yourself, or finding a tiny task that you can actually feel motivated to complete, and just see what happens?
I love it.
How might that one small change create a ripple effect in other areas of your life?
That's a great question.
So think about that, and thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, so you know that feeling.